Picture this, September 28th, 1918. The small French town of Marcoing is under siege. The air is thick with smoke, the ground churned into mud by weeks and weeks of shellfire. British troops are pinned down by relentless German machine gun fire, and among them all is a 27-year-old private from Warwickshire, Leamington Spa, Henry Tandey. What he does next will make him the most decorated British soldier of the entire war. Tandey leads a bayonet charge through the hail of bullets, clearing enemy positions one by one. He captures dozens of prisoners, and while the fighting still rages on, he carries wounded men back to safety, refusing to leave them behind. This isn't one single act of bravery, it's a chain of them. And for it, Henry Tandey is awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest honour for gallantry in the British Army. But Marcoing wasn't Henry Tandey's first taste of war, far from it. He joined the Green Howards in 1910, served in South Africa, and by the time the First World War began, he was already a trained soldier. He fought at Ypres, one of the bloodiest battles in history. He went through the slaughter of the Somme. He served at Cambrai, where tanks first rolled into battle. For acts of bravery at these battles, he earned the Distinguished Conduct Medal, the Military Medal, and finally, the Victoria Cross. By 1918, his name was known across the British Army. But he wasn't chasing glory. He was simply a man who refused to leave his mates to die. But years later, another story began to follow Henry Tandey. It was said that in the final days of war at Marcoing, he came across a wounded German soldier, weapon in hand, but instead of shooting, he let the man go. And according to legend, that soldier was Adolf Hitler.
Blink wie Windhunde, zäh wie Läder.
In 1938, as Europe teetered on the brink of another war, Hitler allegedly told British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain at the time about this moment, that a soldier spared his life in the Great War. Hitler claimed he recognised Tandey's face from a newspaper or a photograph, and to add fuel to it, there was a painting, a war scene by Fortunino Matania, showing a wounded German being helped by a British soldier. A copy of that painting reportedly hung in Hitler's private retreat in the Alps, and some claimed that that soldier was Henry Tandey. See, all this, it's a kind of story that sticks in people's minds. But here's the thing, when historians dug into it, the evidence began to crumble. First, Hitler's own war records don't place him at Marcoing in September 1918. His regiment was stationed miles and miles away. Second, the Matania painting, well, it's not even Tandey. It was based on a staged photo of another soldier, later published in the graphic magazine. Any resemblance to Henry was purely coincidental. Third, the story only began circulating after Hitler mentioned it himself. And if there's one thing we know about Adolf Hitler, is that he understood the power of propaganda. Attaching his survival to Britain's most decorated soldier gave him a destiny narrative. The idea that he was spared for some greater purpose. Most serious historians now agree the encounter didn't only happen, it was impossible. Hitler's regiment wasn't at Marcoing in September 1918. The painting, it wasn't of Henry Tandey. And the entire story, it only appeared once Hitler began telling it himself. It was propaganda to create a false sense of his own destiny. The meeting, it never happened. What is true is Tandey's own words. I took aim but couldn't shoot a wounded man, so I let him go. That tells you everything about Henry Tandey. His morals, his sense of duty, that very British spirit, the refusal to strike down an injured enemy, even in the fog of war. And it doesn't matter if it was Hitler or not. What matters is that Henry Tandey stood by his principles. And nothing, not even history's darkest name, can take that away from him. And here's where I personally have to hold up my hands. I made a short film about this moment, and at the time I thought it was being clever and I was exploring an intriguing what if, a fascinating piece of military folklore. But in doing that, I gave oxygen to a myth that Hitler started himself. I didn't think about a bigger picture. That by repeating that story, I was overshadowing the truth of who Tandey really was. The propaganda distracted from Tandey's real achievements. And I played a part in that. Because the truth is, Henry doesn't need Hitler to be remembered. His courage was real. His service was extraordinary. He was the man who led from the front in the worst fight the modern world has ever seen. The man who pulled wounded comrades out of the mud while bullets crackled over his head. The man who earned every medal on his chest through acts of bravery that defy belief today. This man wasn't driven by politics or propaganda. He was a soldier who fought for the man next to him, who went back into the fire when everyone else was pulling out, who never once put himself before his duty. And yet, ask most people who Henry Tandey is, they'll either tell you the Hitler story or they'll just give you blank stares. And he was one of Britain's greatest warriors, and now he's fading quietly into history. This has got to change. Henry Tandey's true story deserves to be remembered. Not the propaganda, not the myth, the real man, the real battles, the real courage. We should never forget the grit, sacrifice and the unshakable resolve of men like Henry Tandey, British soldiers who did the unthinkable, not once but over and over again, so we could be free today. Because if we don't tell these stories, they'll vanish. And heroes like Tandey, they deserve better than that. So remember them, honour them, and make sure their names are never lost to history.